You know, I am a very young person, so I didn't exactly grow up with the NES or the SNES. In fact, I only knew of the games because of emulation and emulators. So when I heard about this game that was essentially a love letter considered by many of classical 8-bit games, I was very interested to say the least. So when my father had the money, I bought it, played it, and remember quite liking it, if I'm not mistaken. And seeing as the third DLC for the game is supposed to be released sometime during next year, I thought I'd revisit Shovel Knight for a second time. And just to be clear, even though the version that I own contains 2 other campaigns, I will only review the main campaign, A Shovel of Hope. Mainly because the other 2 are monsters of their own and deserve videos of their own, so with that out of the way, let's dig right into Shovel Knight, A Shovel of Hope. The developers announced the game alongside a Kickstarter page on March 17, 2013 with a goal of $75,000 in mind. The game would later meet its goal by late March, raising a total of $311,502.
Money.
What inspires Shovel Knight, however, is very interesting. You see, the down sword thrust move from Solo to the Adventure Link was a move that the developers liked a lot, but thought that it would be more fitting if the user had a shovel. Zelda 2 wasn't the only inspiration, however. According to the director and lead designer Sean Velasco, the game takes inspiration from the Mega Man games, Castlevania 3, Super Mario Bros. 3, DuckTales, and even Dark Souls. I'll go a bit deeper into what aspects from those games became inspiration, but for now, let's talk about the story. Many years ago, lands were untamed, and adventurers roamed them in the search for treasure. 2 of these folks were Shovel Knight and Shield Knight, inseparable and courageous knights that looted for treasure and helped every other person in distress. However, one day, while adventuring in the infamous Tower of Fate, a cursed amulet brought her terrible magic, and by the time Shovel Knight had awoken, the Tower of Fate was sealed, and Shield Knight was nowhere to be found. Broken and filled with grief, Shovel Knight spiraled down into a life of solitude. But with no courageous champions, however, an unstoppable force seized the power, the Enchantress and her Order of No Quarter. The Tower of Fate now unsealed, a new adventure awaits you. Yeah, it's a very simple story, but then again, this is a video game about a knight who uses a shovel as a weapon. I mean, just imagine if the plot went somewhere along the lines of crusading to impose the will of the shovel. That'd be ridiculous! Actually, I would play that. I wonder how do you say shovel in Latin? Toy Train Volt! The game itself is a 2D platformer that has you fighting enemies, collecting treasure, and jumping your way through the levels. And a good looking one for sure. I thought the aesthetics were fantastic and the levels looked beautiful. I loved how well animated the sprites were and how well they popped out of the stages. At times it felt like the sprites were synchronized with the music playing in the background. And talking about the music for a second, Jesus Christ taking a stairway to heaven, the soundtrack for this game is godlike. Jake Kaufman was the main composer, but also aiding in the music composition was Manami Matsumae, who for those who don't know, was the composer for the original Mega Man game, and anyone who has played a Mega Man game can tell you just how fucking good the soundtrack is, and this holds true for Shovel Knight too. It hits the nail on each stage's theme, while also sounding epic. Give them a listen when you have the time. You select a stage via the overworld map, and this is where the Mega Man games and Super Mario Bros. 3 inspiration comes into play. Just like the Mega Man games with its pick your poison type of boss selection, Shovel Knight does the same, albeit it's a bit limited by the amount of knights available at the moment. Still, that doesn't stop you from picking King Knight over Spectre Knight or vice versa. And Super Mario Bros. 3's inspiration comes from the overworld map. It has bonus areas and even roaming mysterious lone warriors that you can fight if they ever cross your path. Shovel Knight himself is an adept warrior that can jump, run, take a decent amount of damage initially, those spikes will kill him in one shot, and has as a main mean of self-defense a trustworthy shovel, with a shovel drop at his disposal, which damages enemies and causes him to bounce. Think of the down step from Solo 2 or the king jump from DuckTales. Master this mechanic as soon as you can, not only because it is the most useful tool at your disposal, but because the game will throw platforming challenges that require you to use a shovel drop. However, a shovel is not the only thing in his arsenal. As the game progresses, you'll gain access to relics, which are essentially sub-weapons. You can find them within the blue chest in the stages, but instead of simply adding the weapon to your arsenal as soon as you find it, you will have to buy it. From whom? from this capitalist motherfucker who has a monopoly in the sub-weapon market. I swear to God, communism will rise once again. Regardless, you can buy them as soon as you find the chest, provided you have the money of course, or you can buy them in the village, but at a higher price. At a higher price? Oh, for fuck! The relics include a wand that allows you to shoot fireballs, a locket that allows you to become invulnerable for a brief amount of time, a pair of knuckles that allow you to dash through dirt, a throwing anchor for enemies above you, an alchemy coin that turns anything it touches, except armored enemies, into gold, a mobile gear that allows you to reach higher places and pass by spikes, triple chalices that can be filled with 3 different elixirs that can refill your health and magic, make you invincible, and make treasure and other goodies be attracted at you. A war horn that nukes anything inside its AoE, a propeller dagger that allows you to soar through the skies, and finally, a green sphere of mass destruction. I thought the cast of relics in this game was overall a win regardless of how situational some of them might be, since I found some relics like the flare wand and the face locket among many others to be very useful. In terms of upgrades for Shovel Knight, many will become available as you play the game. You can upgrade your maximum magic via the blue dude over there, and you can increase your maximum HP via the gastronomer. For the latter, you'll need to exchange meal tickets for meals so delicious, they will increase your maximum HP. You can find them inside the red chest after completing a certain amount of stages, or you can buy them from this goat-looking person who apparently can't decide whether you buy more magic or have a delicious meal. Thusly, he decides to shorten his choices by selling you his meal tickets? I mean, instead of narrowing his choices, you could simply just buy both of them since he has the meal tickets already, so... When you arrive at the second village, you will have access to the works of the Shovelsmith and the Armorer, allowing you to upgrade your shovel and armor respectively. The shovel upgrades allow you to perform a charge attack, a projectile that Shovel Knight can launch whenever he's at full health, and the ability to dig piles in one fell swoop. Your armor upgrades include the final guard, making you drop less gold when you die, the Conjurer's Coat, sacrificing HP in favor of magic, the Dynamo Mail, full charging of charge attack after 2 consecutive shovel drops, and the most useless of them all, the Ornate Plate, a golden armor that gives you no advantage whatsoever, but damn it if it doesn't make you look good as hell. You can only have one set of armor equipped at the time, but your shovel upgrades don't suffer from that limit. I wouldn't say the cast of armor suits is entirely useless. In fact, I think it rather allows you to play with your own style. For example, if your playstyle is aggressive just like mine, then the Dynamo Mail is a match. If you're a person who dies a lot and doesn't want to suffer the consequences as much, or you're struggling with a level, then the Final Guard is absolutely fucking useful. And if you're someone who likes to abuse relics, then the Conjurer's Coat is perfect for you. Now I want to shift my focus into something else. Let's talk about design for a bit. I found the game to be challenging but fair at the same time. Firstly, the game understands that throwing you in a do-or-die situation with a new mechanic is dumb and bad level design. Instead, if the level is going to throw a new platforming element at you, it'll do so in a safe environment where you won't be punished for failing it and can get used to it. Take the statue from Polar Knight's stage, for example. Imagine if instead of showing you this new mechanic in this screen where you have a safe place to experiment with up there, it showed it to you in this screen where there's enemies and bottomless pits over the place. It just wouldn't be right. That doesn't mean the game is flawless in the design aspect, however. The enemy placement can be very fucking questionable at times, and there are certain enemies... let's not talk about them. I'm looking at you motherfuckers. Difficulty-wise, I didn't find the difficulty curve to be too steep either. I thought that each area had a difficulty of its own, but that it also prepared you for what challenges were to come in the next area. This shows in the last levels, where you'll find elements from Mole Knight's stage, Polar Knight's stage, and every other enemy from other stages. The boss fights are not unfair, and their difficulty curve is not too steep either. You go from a simple close quarters combat boss fight from King Knight's castle to a perilous battle in the skies against Propeller Knight. The game isn't that punishing either. If you were to fall in battle, you won't lose a life since Shovel Knight doesn't really use lives.
Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
Instead, you will drop a certain amount of your gold from your treasure pool and will respawn in the last checkpoint you reach. You can also destroy these checkpoints for gold, but be careful as it will stop being a checkpoint when you do so. Thus, the only real penalty for dying is losing some gold, and even then you can still have a chance at collecting the gold you dropped. But if you die before doing so, the money bags that held your gold will be replaced for new ones and the previous amount of gold will be lost for sure. Before we end this video up, I want to address one final thing. Shovel Knight's world. Its towns feel alive and are filled with many interesting people, both human and non-human, and since not all of the inhabitants are necessarily human, I love that those who were not had some sort of visual gag related to them. For example, the peacocks in this universe are the rich ones. There's a haunted hall of champions for you to exercise, and I bring this up because, at least to me, the richness of this world is very important to me. In this game, it gives me a reason to fight for righteousness. But that's Shovel Knight for you. It is a fun, challenging, well-designed platformer filled to the brim with a rich world and very interesting people. It had its flaws, and I had some personal gripes with certain design choices, but those are minor details that are overshadowed by its aesthetic, its soundtrack, and the overall amount of fun you will have while playing it. And if you're not satisfied with the main campaign, there's also a New Game Plus mode where you get to keep all of your equipment, but your adventure also becomes more challenging. And a challenge mode for those that are looking for some extra spice in their game. That being said, thank you so much for watching this video, implying that you did, of course. And if you like what you saw, then maybe consider sticking around. And if you do decide to stick around, then I'll catch you in my next video, whenever that comes out. But until then, take care and have a wonderful night.